whole thing that God had against Edom when he talks about, Jacob I've loved, Esau I've hated, is because he saw, Israel going through hell and basically championing their enemies. Didn't help them, just kind of stood by as they were taken over, and God hated that. He had no care for his brother. He despised his birthright. We did a whole thing about Esau. And Esau and the Edomites, they were a bad people, right? So verse 20, Obadiah, this is what Obadiah says for the Lord. You should not have gazed on the day of your brother in the day of his captivity, nor rejoiced over the children of Judah in the day of their destruction. So there was no love, no concern. And this is why God had a problem with the Edomites, And also, the Edomites laid hands on their substance and cut off those who were trying to escape. So, there's reasons why God does not like the H. We have to make that clear, because he's a just God, and just how they treated their brother. They had no concern, right? So
their brother.
Anyway.
Their brother.
Yeah.
Okay, first thing first. When you come into a so-called black space, the first thing that you want to do is come with truth. Don't come with your emotions. Come with facts. You say, white people are not your enemy. Okay, prove it. Give me one source, one fact in history showing over this last 400 plus years how white people are not the enemy of so-called black people. I'll wait, because you're speaking out of emotions and feelings. But this is facts. It's in the Bible. Listen to this. Deuteronomy 28:68. It says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again. Egypt is synonymous for bondage, captivity, slavery. Okay? With ships. What people went on a ship into slavery? So-called blacks. Everybody know that. Into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. We are still remaining in the captivity that we were in when we came on slave ships over here. Nobody's came and got us. We're actually prisoners of war. Y'all have not let us go. That's why we need passports to leave the country, even though this is, and I know some might want to argue and say this is our homeland. We were already here. Some were here, not all. A lot of so-called blacks came on slave ships to America. But that's not the point. This is the point. By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies. The Bible is telling us Israelites, so-called blacks, that we will be sold unto our enemies. So when we got off them slave ships, who were we sold to? Your people, so-called white people. So I'm going to rerun your question or your statement. White people are not your enemy. I beg to differ. The Bible proves you wrong 1,000 times 1,000. It proves you wrong. It says, and there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen, slave men, and bondwoman, slave woman, and no man shall buy you. Who came and redeemed us? Last time I checked, we're still here as prisoners of war. So don't come speaking emotion, come with facts. Of course you are. If you weren't, why is it that your people shoot down my people in the middle of the street and go off not guilty? Why is that they getting ready to acquit? If y'all are not the enemies of so-called blacks, explain why Derek Chauvin, the officer who put his knee on George Floyd's neck, is getting ready to be acquitted. Make it make sense. Explain why the so-called black man is 3/5 of a man. He's not even a whole man. Only an enemy has done this. They getting ready to acquit him. They getting ready to let him off. See, and that's scriptural too. Zechariah 11:5. Whose oppressors slay you, who slay us, and then hold themselves not guilty. A friend doesn't do things like that. An enemy does things like that. And we can go on and on and on of the things that y'all have done to so-called black folks for the last 400 plus years. To come on here and make that statement is pretty bold. You got to be living under a rock somewhere. Of course you are. The Bible even tells us you are our enemy. We are who you was, so-called blacks was sold to whites. But the Bible is telling us that you are our enemy, and that's why y'all continue to do the things that y'all do to us. So next time you decide you want to come into a so-called black space and comment, come with facts. Because at the end of the day, the facts still remain. You guys are, whites are the enemies of so-called blacks. And that's just truth. And I'll end it with this. This is the three holy children. This is in the Apocrypha. Y'all remove this. The Romans, your people, your forefathers removed this from the Bible, which is our history, so that we wouldn't know the truth. But this is the three holy children, 1 and 9. And thou didst deliver us into the hands of the lawless enemies. This is the Most High again declaring that so-called white people are in fact the enemies of so-called black people. To the lawless enemies, most hateful forsakers of God, and to an unjust king and the most wicked in all the world. If y'all don't open up this Bible and read and find out who is who, at the end of the day, your biblical God-given nationality is a Edomite. You're Esau. And guess what? Esau hated Jacob. Jacob is the so-called black people. That's our biblical nationality. We're the Israelites. Esau hated Jacob. And he said when he buried his father, he will slay his brother Jacob. And what do you think has been going on for 400 plus years in America? Whites have been slaying blacks and go off not guilty for 400 plus years. If that's not an enemy, somebody please explain to me what an enemy is.